is Ruby and I'm an alienated parent. This is my story. My court proceedings started in December 2016 when my ex left with my children and did not allow me to see them. The court process continued from December 2016 and the final hearing was in September 2020. The final hearing was for 5 days, and the outcome of that hearing was that the child had suffered parental alienation and the father was causing emotional harm. Therefore, my son was removed from the father into a foster care as a bridging placement to be returned back to me. Finally, the foster placement did not work because the father did not stop contacting the child constantly and made it very difficult for the foster carer to put in boundaries and start to do the damage that he had caused. Therefore, the placement failed badly, and the father appealed, and his appeal was granted as he was against the decision of the child being taken away from him. In March 2021, there was another final hearing at the High Court, and the decision was made that the child did not settle into the foster placement. Therefore, it was difficult for me to take the child back because he was still resistant towards me, and therefore the living arrangements for the child was that the father would have the residential responsibility of the child. And the judges finally just apologised to me to say that, we are sorry that this has taken so long and this is the outcome of it. But at the end of the day, sorry is not good enough because I have lost my second child now because he becomes 16 in July this year. The time frame of the court hearing was ridiculous because it did not take 4.5 years to come to the conclusion that the father was causing parental alienation and he was emotionally abusing the child and he was damaging my relationship with my children. The outcome for the social services was they sat on the edge and watched the whole process to continue. Therefore, the delay was caused because they were many times prompted by the judges to say, you need to take action, but they did do the findings of parental alienation, but then they became hesitant to take action until they were cornered on the September 2020 hearing, where all the professionals had given evidence to say they did not feel the child was safe staying with the father, and the father was damaging the child and he was causing parental alienation. Strangely, the parental alienation word started to disappear in March 2021 because the judges and the professionals looked at the view that I was just as bad as the father, because if two parents are not getting on, they are to blame. But when two parents don't get on and they separate, that is how a relationship ends. So why the judges and professionals are shocked as to why parents do not get on after they have separated, it's not a shocking situation. It's normal. Two people didn't get on. They're angry with each other. They're upset. But the bigger parents are the ones that do not drag the children into the situation. But sadly, the parents that do drag the children into this situation make it very harder for the other parent, to have any access to their child. Therefore, I felt I was pushed out by the father, and then the court process dragged on so much that I ran out of time. There was no more time left for me. The judge's judgment was that the judge felt that the relationship had been damaged, probably for life, which I agree with this judgment. But at the end of the day, they did not have to sit on it for 4.5 years to come to the conclusion that the father was causing parental alienation and emotional harm. So I'm very, very frustrated about this, and I do not want to see another parent go through this.
Hi, Ruby. It's Mark Sheppard again.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today with regards to your experiences that you've had with the family court. Personally, when you contacted me and spoke to me about your recent case, I was extremely angry and frustrated with the whole process. One, because it shouldn't happen. And two, the same old story and the same old flaws seem to be coming up in your case, like many other family cases out there. So I really just want to talk about your experiences and how you feel about everything. Because for me, I felt there was a grave injustice with regards to what happened with you and your son. And I think it could have been handled differently in order to give a peace of mind and maybe a better outcome for you. Okay? So when did you recently go back to court?
The recent final hearing was in March 2021.
Okay. So before you got to that stage, when did you go to court? When did that particular process start?
September 2020.
Right. Okay. So from September to March, did the court order a fact-finding for you?
No, they didn't.
Anyone that makes allegations against anyone, there should be a fact-finding. Now, in your particular case, due to the length of time that was going on with your case, did they say why there wasn't a fact-finding done for you?
Yes, they did. This was brought up many, many times, but the reason they give is, well, it's the two of you saying it and there's no witness. So they find it very difficult. They feel that, well, we don't know, because one is saying you did that, the other one is saying, no, I didn't. And they just feel that they don't know how to solve this situation. That is why they try to shove it under the carpet.
Because the purpose of the fact-finding is to investigate the allegations. So they wouldn't need to even say that. They would just do what they need to do in the background, do the investigation, which may even include contacting social services, contacting the police, seeing if any reports have been made, etc., and that way they can continue with the fact-finding to see if the allegations are true. Okay, but for some reason in your case and many others, they feel that it's not important to conduct a fact-finding, and I find that very bizarre, because it would have stopped the he said, she said from the start and allowed the court to focus on the process.
That's right, I agree with you 100%. But the way they look at it is, well, we don't know how to deal with it. We are not witnesses. We don't have anybody to say anything otherwise. Therefore, they don't know how to deal with it. That's the short story.
So with your particular case, it lasted 5 days, and you had about 700 pages of evidence and information submitted to the court. Okay, that's a lot. That's an awful lot of information being submitted to the court. Now, I can guarantee you that judges will not read all that. It's just far too much information. So, for me, it would be easy for you to have a fact-finding to reduce the amount of evidence that's submitted and allow you to focus on the best interest of the child. Yeah?
Yes.
So, throughout the period of time that you've had going through court, these are just some of the orders that were granted for yourself. An interim care order, a child arrangements order, a prohibited steps order, a specifics issue order, a non-molestation order, occupation order, and a family assistance order. Now, for me, that's a lot of orders, okay? But did they help you? Did any of these orders help with your case?
No, not at all.
And why do you think that is?
Because my ex wasn't going to follow them, and there was no consequences for him for breaking these orders. So he continued to do what he wanted to do, irrelevant of the court orders. It didn't mean anything to him.
So in terms of the orders, did he break any of the orders? And if he did the court look at the breaches, and did they do anything about the breaches?
Yes, he broke the contact orders that they had ordered him to bring the child to contact and everything. He didn't. There was loads of contacts that weren't happening at all. He did breach the court orders, but no action was taken against him.
It just doesn't make sense. And so, really and truthfully, there isn't any point of having court orders then.
That's right, yes. It doesn't mean anything to these people.
Because if you've got that many orders and it's not being followed, which is an awful lot of orders, then it makes no sense ordering them.
That's right.
So we established there's no fact finding, okay? So this ultimately allowed the process to be strung out, okay? So when you went back in September, was that still in the private family court? Or was that the beginning of the next stage?
That was a private hearing, right. A 5-day hearing.
Okay. So, with regards to the people that were involved with your situation, okay, so what kind of professionals assisted in your case?
There was a psychologist that was appointed. She was excellent because she recognised parental alienation. It was all in her. It was written in all her reports. The guardian, excellent. I know people don't have very good views of guardians, but she was hands-on, and she came up with the same conclusion, that parental alienation was ongoing, and she wanted the child removed from the father's care. Social services, yes, they were saying there was parental alienation going on, but it was not. They weren't acting on anything. Although they were the lead professionals in a case, which even the judges felt, well, why are they not taking any action? So basically, they sat on the edge and just watched and listened to what everyone was saying, but not taking any action.
So, was anyone like Kafkas or anyone appointed?
Yes, Kafkas was, the guardian was.
Okay, right. So, your experience with Kafkas and the guardian that was appointed to you was very positive.
Yes, very.
So they supported the diagnosis of parental alienation and severe harm to your child.
She did.
What else was your child diagnosed with, if you don't mind talking about it?
No, he was diagnosed with ASD, autism. That came,
and what is ASD?
It's autism, a condition where a child's thinking is not practically, it's black and white.
Okay.
So they cannot think for themselves, and they come under vulnerable people who are easily manipulated, and they don't really understand situations or can't think clearly for themselves.
Right.
So they mainly mirror someone's behaviour.
So does that mean that person can be quite impressionable? So if someone was discussing a situation to them and sort of made it out to be someone else's fault, for instance, would they be impressionable from that sense, where they would believe what the person's saying?
Yes, definitely, because they can't think for themselves.
Okay. See, how long did it take for your son to be diagnosed with this?
I was very shocked because this diagnosis came quite late. I think in 2019 it came, which is quite shocking because I found it quite difficult to understand why, because of these behaviours were happening, because of parental alienation and emotional abuse. Suddenly, there was a new twist to the story that he's got ASD now. So it was kind of, first it was falling into the psychological abuse harm criteria, and then that was suddenly changed into the ASD. Now, I did go to discuss it with the doctors there, to say to them, like, these kind of behaviours have never happened before. The child was in my care till the age of 12. This kind of, if my oldest has ASD, so I know quite a lot and I'm quite knowledgeable about autism. So I said I did not pick up any of that with my younger one. And then suddenly I was given this, that, he's got ASD. But those behaviours did never ever occur until the age of 12.
So when the court process started in 2016, what professionals were appointed at that point? Can you remember?
Yes, social services were involved. The Guardian came on board. Kafkas was involved.
Okay, so no one at that time could have diagnosed your son?
No.
So no one saw at that point that your son had ASD?
No. Even to the point when the psychologist did the assessment, he was still not diagnosed. And therefore, she put all that down to he's a troubled child. He's a troubled child who is expressing himself in troubled ways, you know. And that's how she was very shocked as well to hear ASD, because she was like, I didn't come across that.
Well, this is what I mean. So we from 2016 to 2019, there was no diagnosis, okay? But then in 2019, all of a sudden, there's a diagnosis.
Yes.
And they said, oh, it's, you know, the way he's behaving is due to this particular diagnosis, but no one diagnosed it before.
That's
okay?
Right.
So we all know with things like parental alienation, things like that, emotional harm is the biggest thing that children go through with regards to being influenced by one parent. So Ruby, we've heard about the whole process of the professionals that were involved and your son's new diagnosis that came in 2019. But what I want to know, and I think a lot of people want to know, is why did your particular case go from private to public?
It changed in the September final hearing because social services decided to start proceedings for an interim care order.
So that then automatically moved it to public?
Yes, it became all in one then.
Right, okay. So in terms of when it went public now, so that means then both of you got legal aid?
That's right, yes.
Okay. So assuming that from the previous diagnosis that I read about the parental alienation, the issues that behavioural issues that your son was having, the diagnosis that he had, the continued lack of contact and encouragement, shall I say, from your ex-partner to get your son to communicate with you, okay? Did that ever change anything within terms of the public court proceedings? Did that actually influence anything? What changed their mind from the parental alienation that was diagnosed on every single report to then sort of everyone changing their mind when it went to public?
In the March court hearing, I had to give evidence, and when I was called upon, the judge questioned me to say, can I remember anything good about my ex-partner? I was unable to tell anything positive because there was nothing positive. I was being very honest about it. When my ex was questioned, he said we had a beautiful marriage and we were best friends. So the judge looked at it that one is saying on one end, the other one is on the other end, and therefore he felt if I had nothing positive to say about my ex, that meant the child was the identity of the father. So it's basically, he said to me, if you feel the father's useless, then you're making it see that the child is useless. So that is, I was quite, I think that was a turning point.
But this is where it gets confusing for me. So basically, they're saying, because now, they're bearing in mind you're separated here and you're going through a divorce.
Yes.
Okay. So it's very rare that you get people in a harmonious separation. Okay. Now, did they ever use the phrase high conflict?
Yes.
Right. So this is something that they use an awful lot in court cases, and I find that by using that term, it allows them to prolong the process of family court. Okay. So, with regards to them changing their mind about you and basically saying it's he said, she said, with regards to the evidence that was produced by the specialists, so the professionals, so the doctors, the psychologists, the guardian even, they all made comments about the lack of support that you received from the local authority, which basically delayed your case for X amount of years. Okay? How do you feel knowing that a public service like the local authority, which is supposed to support you, didn't at that point where you needed them to take action? How did that make you feel?
I was angry. I felt frustrated, helpless, because the action that they needed to take, they weren't taking. So it was very, very frustrating for me to say, come on, Knight, do something.
Can you remember the things that they put in place to assist you?
Not a lot at all.
They had an order in place, or a family assistance order. So what did that actually do for you? What? Because obviously they went to court to get this order to say we're going to put in place a family assistance order, which is basically supposed to assist your family, and find a solution to the problem of the alienation and the significant harm to your child. Did that help you in any way?
No, all they did was, like, for the first 6 months, they got an organisation that works with them, Family Lives, to support contact, because I wanted someone to be there with me when I was seeing my son. After the 6 months, Family Lives felt there was no reason to have someone there because there was no safeguarding issues, and they said the mother and son get on really well, so there was no point of having a third person watching over them, which I had no issue with. But after that, social services were not able to appoint anyone. Every time my ex refused the person I'd nominate to come to contact with me, the social services never turned around and said to them, if we're happy with that person, then you will have to accept it. So every time his refusal, they just went with that. So he wouldn't agree, therefore they couldn't support me. So I felt that was more tilted to that side, that he would say no, and then it was like, well, we can't force him, and then the child will start to say no, and then it just became 2 against 1, and then that wasn't done.
So in terms of, because he was obviously placed in a bridging placement.
That's right.
So what was the contact like between you and your son in this bridging placement?
It became very abusive. He rang me a few times. He phoned me and he said, this is all you're doing. Again, him being moved to a foster placement was blamed onto me. And my son was very, very angry with me. He said, I can't believe you, as my mother has done this to me. The professionals tried to explain to him as well that your mum did not come to that decision. It was not her decision. And I said to him, I have no power to say to the judge to remove you, to put you into a foster placement. This was not my doing, but the blame 100% came back on me.
See, I just find that unacceptable.
Yeah.
I think the lack of support that parents get when they're in this situation, and the lack of understanding that the children have. Now, bearing in mind that your son has some learning difficulties, so it's going to be harder for him to understand. But surely if this was diagnosed a lot earlier, this whole process of going through the family court would have been a lot easier on him. So they left that big chunk of a diagnosis out from the early stages of this process, which could have been adapted better for him to understand why this is all happening and why you're in court and what the process is, because it would have to be explained differently. But because it wasn't, he was allowed to then think the way he does, with the hostility towards you, and blame you for the process. So there's a lot of errors that were made that shouldn't have been made and should have been identified earlier.
Yes, I agree.
So after your final judgment, how have you personally coped with it?
I've come to terms with it, that my relationship with my children is damaged, possibly for life. I don't, the positive thinking has gone. I don't sit and wait and think, they will contact me or I will see them again. It's been very, very hard because it's very difficult to let go, although I'm trying to tell my mind that, I've got to get over this. That's part of me. My children are part of me that I've lost. I totally blame the system for messing it up totally for me. Their sorries and apologies are left me with my children further away from me, and I cannot reach out to them.
So you can't. So now that judgment is done, do you feel there's any way that you can reunify or rekindle that relationship with your son?
No.
None whatsoever.
No.
That is shocking. Because we've all been there. We've all been
That's right.
in the situation where once that judgment is done, there is actually no support process for reunification. They tend to do the final judgment and then leave you to your own devices and say, well, you can send maybe an indirect contact of a letter or a card, which again is not good enough.
That's right. The judge said just keep reaching out. I was at the final hearing. They did ask me about what I wanted to do about contact, and I said to them I wasn't going to force contact because it kept coming back. The mother forces the child to see her, even the solicitors of the other party, the child solicitor. That mother forces. So I said to the judge, I'm going to take a step back, and my son knows where I am. He can pick up that phone and say to me, Mum, let's meet up. And I think that way it'll be better that he does it. Now, I know that he can do it, but he's not going to be encouraged to do it by his father. And therefore, the contact was dropped. They offered me to go into a contact centre. And I thought, I've been down there because I've done that right at the beginning when, the court case started. I was at the contact centre. And I know that my relationship doesn't improve with my son because his father sends in with a lot more stuff against me. And it was just constantly and then I got a few abusive letters as well, emails and letters from my son. And it got to the point that I turned around and said to the judge, look, I can't take this child back. He's far, far too damaged. I don't know how to repair him, and I can't manage him.
So this is the issue I have, is when a child gets to that stage, now that's a lot of therapy that needs to be supported with not only yourself, but also your child. So there needs to be ongoing support, not to the point where you just have a final hearing, the judgment's made, and then they ask you, well, what do you want to do? Well, hold on. I've not had no support through the whole process, but now you're asking me what you want me to do. What can I do? You're the professionals.
That's right.
You're supposed to be supporting me. You're supposed to be helping my son, but you're asking me now what to do, what I can do. As you can see, there is nothing I can do. I've tried everything, and there's no support. It's not even to say that CAFCAS or the local authorities would help implement a reunification process for you and your son. They don't. Once the final hearing's done, they kind of wash their hands of the whole process and leave you with a broken heart, a damaged child, and no official process to even bridge that gap again with your child.
That's right.
So what does the future hold for you now?
For now, I want to see the system change.
Okay.
Right. I'm not able to save my children, but I don't want to see another parent go through that lengthy process when right at the beginning everything could be sorted out. So I want to see the system to get fairer. I want to see less parents fighting for their children. And I don't want to hear about another parent who's taken their life because they can't see their child.
And this is a problem, isn't it?
That's right.
Due to the process of family court, we do get, and not only my organisation, there's many organisations and support groups out there that have heard the unfortunate stories of parents taking their lives. And I agree with you, this is becoming a bit of a epidemic type problem with people not getting the support that is needed in order to stop them from thinking that the only way out is to take their lives.
That's right, because they've been left to deal with it on their own.
And this is what I was saying about the ongoing support. It's so important to have organisations, and not just organisations like ours, but also to have the local authorities and the guardians, CAFCAS and stuff, to actually think, well, we need to put some kind of reunification or support package in place, because we cannot continue to leave parents to their own devices at the end of a final court judgment, okay? Because that's where the loss of contact, the broken heart, the family, and it's not just the immediate family, it's also the wider family, the grandparents, everything. Everyone loses out.
Yes.
So there needs to be some form of support to support everyone throughout that process.
That's right. The target parent is forgotten if it's lost, and they're left to deal with it on their own. Some of them have gone really downhill. Some of them have taken their own lives, which is very, very sad, because they feel so isolated and lonely after dealing with the outcome. But for me, it's made me stronger, because I want to fight on for other parents. I want to see the system changed. The errors that were made in my court case, I don't want to see them again. There's a lot of things that went wrong.
I can see. I was, to be honest, I was quite outraged by the amount of errors that were made in your particular court case. But this is why we need to talk about these things. We can't just let it happen and not let people see what's happening, because people need to understand what's going on. In order to improve a situation, we need to discuss it. We need to put it out there so people understand what's going on and can get behind the process of change. And that's what we're here for.
That's right. This is why I wanted to share my story, because I feel the awareness is important. And for me to speak about it, then other people can relate to their situation.
And know they're not alone.
And they're not alone, definitely. We're not alone. And definitely we need more support. Definitely there's organisations need to support that parent who is now left without a child. And they've got to pick up the pieces and get on with their life. It's not easy.
But we do really appreciate you taking your time out to talk to us about this situation. It's not something that we would like anyone else to have to experience. And that's why we're here. We're here for the change. We're here to improve and support people throughout this process. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us, Ruby.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.